这是地球上最著名、保存最完好的陨石坑——巴林杰陨石坑。它位于美国亚利桑那州海拔1400米的高原戈壁上，从5万年前的撞击以来，至今依然保持着当年的模样。这次我们也有幸亲自感受它的真容以及它背后的故事。
我们这次住的这个房车营地的办公室，外形非常的独特，像一个原色的那种外星基地一样。这边是一个简单的休息室，然后洗衣房在这里。我刚刚把我们2桶我们的和狗的东西全都放这洗了。我们以为我们就是来看这么一个坑的，没想到这边搞得特别丰富，有博物馆，然后有纪录片、电影院，还有那种4D 的，就是体验4D ride 体验。等会儿还会出去看一下实地的这个陨石坑。这就是这块陨石里面目前找到最大的一块碎片，整颗陨石是45米。我刚才读这边这个介绍关于这个陨石坑，它是大概5万年前，然后一颗陨石掉在现在 Arizona 这个地方，因为我们现在所处的地方是一个高原，然后大概是以64000千米每小时的一个速度砸下来，砸到这边之后形成了一个大概200米深的一个陨石坑，这是我们等会儿要去看的地方。看，就是美国自由女神像是大概300多 feet， 然后这是埃菲尔铁塔的高度，我们这个陨石坑大概是埃菲尔铁塔的1半。然后当这个陨石砸到这块地方的时候，它这里写着大概是大约相当于2000万吨炸药爆炸形成的一个威力。它这边给我们提供了一个吸铁石，让我们去感受一下不同类型陨石，就是这个是含铁的那种陨石，是会被吸住的。然后这有一种 stony， 我也不知道是什么陨石，但是它有非常轻微的吸力，我感觉，但是这个力量就是很轻。陨石它的重量有多少？它这边有提供了2个 sample， 一个是就是铁的陨石，这是一个普通的地球上的石头的重量。啊，这个我可以非常轻松的拿起来，我感受一下这个。我靠！哦，2只手可以，哎，1只手也可以，刚才卡住了，但是还是很重，1只手非常吃力。看完刚才那个9分钟纪录片，我们现在要出来走一个大概1个小时到1个半小时的一个徒步路线，然后我们有一个向导在前面会跟我们进行一些解说。哇哦！
40 miles out from this impact site, you would have seen the mushroom cloud it created from any direction. 20 to 30 miles out, still being hit with hurricane winds and molten rock and debris being flung through the air in every direction. 7 miles out was complete destruction. Nothing survived. Now, this crater was actually first recorded to be found in 1870 by a man named Franklin Bennett. Franklin Bennett's mission was simple. Come out here, scout the territory, and find places to build what we now know as the Southern State Railroad. However, back then it was still called the Atlantic Pacific Railroad. Upon scouting this territory, instead of finding that place to build it, he in fact found this crater instead. Now, when he reported it back to the general, unfortunately, the general didn't believe him. He actually thought Franklin Bennett was delusional. It had to be hallucinated for spending way too much time under the hot desert sun. Because in General Custer's mind, there was no way. There's a gigantic hole in the middle of the desert. Now, it wasn't until 20 years later our founder, Daniel Barringer. Well, living in Philadelphia, started hearing rumors coming from this territory that the people occupying at the time were finding rocks filled with iron and nickel in them. Now, Daniel Barringer was already a very successful silver and gold mining engineer. The year was 1901 when he first stepped foot here at the crater. All he had to do was look upon the crater. He instantly knew in his mind it was in fact a meteorite impact zone, but he still couldn't prove it on his own. So what he did was encase some of that sediment, write out a letter, and sent it off to the USGS, the United States Geological Survey. So they would come out here to do their testing to help verify his theory. But they both actually ran into a little problem. Because back then, the USGS and Daniel Barringer were actually first under the impression that whatever created this crater had in fact be the exact same size of the crater, still intact in one piece, and still buried under the ground. That is what they first believed. Now, what actually happened when that meteorite came down at an 80-degree angle from the southeast, it's almost straight down on impact. 80% of that meteorite was disintegrated. The rest of the 20% was then flown for up to 30 miles in every direction. Some pieces left behind from that meteor are actually so small, they're known as spheroids. They will look like black sand, little black rocks. They completely cover the entire outside of this crater and all the surrounding rims. They are under your feet right now. Now, when the USGS came out to do their test, instead of testing anywhere around the crater, even into the rims, all they did was go straight to the bottom, because that's where they believed that gigantic piece was located. So, of course, all their tests failed. Then between 1890 to about 1910, but most of them still believe they were all volcanically formed at the time. Now, Daniel Barringer was actually known to be a very stubborn gentleman. He didn't like their answer. He still believed this was a meteorite impact zone and that gigantic meteorite was buried under the ground. So he decided to go forth and start his own plan. His original plan was to find that meteorite, take the iron from it, and then sell that iron off to the railroad for a massive profit. He just bought the mining rights for the crater in 1902 for around $15,000. They started mining it in 1903. They mined it for 25 years. In that 25 years, they dug and drilled 20 different mine shafts all around and inside the crater. They never found anything inside of it because they were always looking in the wrong place. And after 25 years of failing at his mining venture, he then decided it was now time to return home because he had bankrupted himself by spending $7 million of his family's wealth between the years of 1902 and 1920. Today, due to inflation, of course, been worth a little over $100 million. The only thing he ever went home with was only the deed to the crater and 2 miles surrounding. He was still succeeded by 8 adult children, who in fact said this crater was their father's worst and greatest obsessions ever. Because till the day he passed, he still believed that meteorite was buried somewhere under the ground. But for some reason, his children decided they didn't want to move to the middle of the desert. They wanted to stay home. It's understandable. But with that decision being made, this crater was then left alone for about 5 to 10 years. But the story of the crater was already out, and most people and researchers wanted to come out to the crater and see it for themselves, get their own opinions and observations of the crater. But there was no road to this crater yet, and those people were crossing over the Bar to Bar Ranch's territory. Today, they're the largest cattle ranch in Arizona alone. However, just like the 1880s, they prefer you not to be on their land. So instead of getting upset, they actually looked at it as a huge opportunity. They reached out to Daniel Barringer's children with the deal and an offer. They said, we'll build your road, maintain your grounds, and they'll run the crater as an attraction if they got to charge a fee. Now, Daniel Barringer's children loved that deal because they did not have to move. And in 1945, the Bar to Bar Ranch reopened the crater, now just calling it Barringer's Crater, with the first charge ever of 25 cents per person. So it has gone up a little bit ever since. You can blame that inflation. But with that deal being struck, it also created the Meteor Crater Enterprise. We are still ran and operated by today. Because here at the crater, we're still family owned and operated. We are federally protected, but we are not federally or state funded. Now, the state actually tried really hard a while back to purchase this crater to make us part of that national park system. However, at the time they tried, they had just bought the Grand Canyon, so they could afford us. It was only then in 1963 this crater was finally given its classification of meteorite impact zone, nearly taking almost 100 years to classify it. Our whole reason to continue the research here at the crater, especially with new tech coming out all the time, what we could do with it and what we could do here with it is what we look at.
所以刚才我们的向导在讲，就是这个陨石坑其实是属于美国私人的，然后他们也想自己做研究，然后他们就卖这边的一些陨石，然后来资助一些学校的一些科研，然后帮助他们来更好的去 研究这个陨石坑，这种东西很震惊啊，居然都可以是私人操作的，
对，
不像中国的话都是就是国家来进行的研究。
对。
但是蚯蚓就是当年的古蚯蚓，然后它特别长特别粗，
古蚯蚓
也不太一样，
太可怕了！要是现在有这么大的蚯蚓，
这个是陨石撞击下来形成的岩石的结晶，然后它一年四季都是冰凉的，因为它是那种晶体，跟一般的石头不太一样。这个陨石坑呢，当年也在美国阿波罗登月的时候拿来作为宇航员训练，因为月球上面有很多环形山嘛，所以这个地方就很接近月球的陨石坑、环形山的地形。哦，它应该就是真的陨石。
陨石小碎片。
对。
这边一袋50。92的铁。
From the Earth or from the space?
I mean, it's from space.
It's from
the
space.
Piece of meteorite that
Okay.
hit, that's actual piece of metal.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Can we have this too?
Okay.
Hey. Oh. OK。这是大飞过来，过来，妈妈跟你说。好，妈妈跟你说，你快闻。你跟你说，你现在站的地方是5万年前外星来的时候。你快闻一下，记住这个味道，不是吃的，不是吃的。你说5万年前外太空的味道，闻闻闻，来再给你闻一个，你好想吃。皮皮，你记住了吗？你记住了吗？你记住了吗？外太空的时候你学废了吗？那舔一舔吧，就让你舔一舔，学废了啊！好，竟然没有睡觉在车上，我觉得他是闻了刚才那个外太空的味道。大受震撼，深受洗礼，现在在沉思。哇，原来这就是知识的力量。睡着了。天呐，我刚夸你，不禁夸呀。